Welcome to After the Paycheck, the series dedicated to helping people to and through their retirement process. This week I'm here with Sam Lang, founder and CEO of Rubino & Lang Wealth Partners, and great gift giver because he knew that I was having trouble with my hair situation a few weeks ago. So he got this hat made. I like how it has the company logo and everything.
Truth be told, we got that for clients, but you've been saying you needed something to hide the haircut, so here you go.
There we go. I love it.
But I'm back in the rotation. I like it.
It is. It's been a while. I haven't actually been face to face with you in a while.
Yeah.
And the office is semi-open now. You've been seeing a few people here in the office here and there, right?
Yeah. For the last month or so, we've been slowly opening. We've had, a fair amount of demand from people wanting to come in and see us face to face. And there's nothing like having that in-office face-to-face interaction and meeting.
Yeah.
But we've been doing a lot of Zoom calls and virtual meetings, and that's working out well too. But
yeah,
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, there's a bit of they call it a Zoom fatigue after a while.
You
just kind of get burnt out on doing that virtual stuff. And like you said, it's nice just to see your face.
It's nice to see your face. And for you, you actually got to go to the daycare and drop your daughter off.
I did. It was. This has been a blessing. Yeah, it is. Yeah, we're being cautious, but we're being optimistically cautious with everything going on. Yeah,
4 months at home. It's a lot to ask.
Yes,
any young parent, right?
Yeah. And thank you for the balancing act that you've allowed us to do for everything. But because we haven't had that ability to kind of see people in person in a larger group, so one thing that we were discussing is when you were doing your events and seminars, something that you would talk about is factors that are affecting retirement today.
Yes. Yep.
So you keep your seminars and everything up to date every year. Or
every year. Changes, life changes, and events change, and
right.
demographics change, economy changes. So we do our best to keep everything up to date.
Right. So I thought because we can't do these events, in person with people, it'd be great to take at least a section of something that you talk about during those events and talk about that in this week's episode of After the Paycheck. And it's about choosing your distribution methods in retirement because there are there are a number of issues that affect retirement today, right?
Sure.
And what are those 4 things?
Well, you got longevity, right? Yeah. People living longer and longer, so retirement could, in the past, maybe it was 20 years. Now it could be 35 years.
Right.
We hear often about inflation, how things cost more and more, and we know that. We can go to the grocery store and we see that. So I think one of the things that people don't think a whole lot about is inflation as we go into retirement. But one of the major things that we really should spend some time on is just making sure that we choose the right way to take your money.
Right. And that's, again, what we're going to focus on, choosing those distribution methods. So what we're going to do today is kind of discuss what types of distribution methods there are, how to determine which one is right for me, and some rules that I should understand as I either age out or before I really start to, I don't want to say concrete, but make my decision in which distribution methods I think is right for me. So
I think a lot of times people don't think a whole lot about that. They think more about, well, is my account in the right place? Am I choosing the right index? How's my return, compared to my sister's return? They don't think about sort of how they're going to take money from their savings.
Right.
And that day will come for everybody.
I think there's a lot of, I read whatever on the internet and that applies to whatever it is in my situation. There's a blanket approach for how you should retire. Right. And that's not so much the case. And that's actually what we're going to get into today.
Well, each and every person's situation is different, right? It depends on your age, your tax bracket. Do you need the money? Do you have a pension? So every person's situation is different. But to your point, I think people need to just think about that in advance a little bit, and also know what their options are.
Right.
Because everybody's going to take money from their savings maybe differently than the next person.
So let's get into that. What are some of those distribution options that I have as I'm getting ready to retire?
So you see a lot of times people want to take their money and run. The lump sum distribution method. And then other times you see people just want to leave their money as is, which is, just staying put. In today's world, with a lot of job changes, people leaving their employers, you can certainly stay put. And you can just leave the money where it is. One of the things that people should be aware of, if you work for, say, company ABC, and you've been there for, 6 months and you have an account worth, $4,200, you can't really just stay put because as an administrator, if the account is less than $5,000, they will just cut you a check. And then you have to either take it as ordinary income or find a way to roll it over. But you could leave the money at your former employer and say, you know what, I'll get around to making some decisions as to where I should put that when I get around to it.
Okay. So you're saying one of these options is just staying put. I want to leave the money where it is. But you just made a really good point that I didn't think about is every job that you have or every 401k account or retirement account that you have to think about how you're going to distribute from all of those. So if you have had 8, 10 jobs over the course of your career, you might have 8, 10 accounts out there that you have to make a choice on what your distribution method is for each one.
Well, you got a bunch of things to consider, right? One, is this account performing as well as that account? Are you actually spending the time to manage those 8 or 10 different accounts? Chances are, if you're being truthful to yourself, probably not, right? You look at the statement and go, okay, and you tuck it away to the next month. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is a lot of times, sometimes that actually happens. People will retire and they have multiple retirement accounts. And they think, well, I'm going to take my RMDs, which we'll get to maybe if we have time a little bit later. But they're taking monies from not all of the same places at once, or they're taking it in a manner where it doesn't satisfy the required minimum distribution, and they found themselves just in a sort of a management mess. Right. So a lot of times we encourage people to think about consolidating. I mean, nobody needs 8 or 10 different retirement accounts, and if you can consolidate them into one place, I think it's safe to say the management of that would be a lot easier from every aspect.
Right. And so that's the big pro to consolidating is, like you said, it's easier to manage. Is there a con to consolidating that many accounts?
If you do it correctly, I don't really see there's a downside to that. I think probably the downside to leaving it at the former company's 401k is just choices. Maybe you work for a small company, maybe they have a lousy 401k plan and they have 12 choices. Well, there might be 2,000 choices out there.
Right.
So, there could be some tax consequences, but I think it's important to get good advice and good direction as to how to do that. So I don't really see a con to not consolidating.
Gotcha. Okay. So we were just talking about multiple accounts and everything, but that was under the umbrella of staying put, right? Your distribution method is you don't need that money right now, and you don't need to.
Yeah, if you're 30-something years old, you can't take the money till you're 59 and a half anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So you might just say, I'll just leave it there, and then you get another job, and it happens again. I'll just leave it there. Next thing you know, it's 10 years later, and you haven't gotten around to doing any consolidation. Right. You have 4 different accounts. Right. So that happens from time to time.
Okay. The other option that you have is as you're getting to retire, again, now I'm 59 and a half or I'm 60 and I'm ready to retire. I have all these accounts. The other option is I want to take it all out at once. I want to take a lump sum. Right.
Give me my money. I'm out of here.
Right.
If it's a small account, you need the money. Maybe you're doing an addition. We see that again from time to time. People understand that if you withdraw $20,000, for the new shed, or you're going to trade in your old car for a new one, it becomes taxable. So you're just going to remember, whatever you take is taxable. So if you have $1 million 401k plan, maybe there's a need for $1 million, but all at once, but taking it as a lump sum generally is not the best choice.
Which kind of leads us to option number 3, which is really what most, I would feel, people choose is
some type of maybe systematic withdrawal.
Exactly. Yeah. Either and then there's 2 types of those. There's like a fixed number, and then there's a percentage, right?
Well, I think a lot of times people hear about the 4% withdrawal rule, and that has proven to sort of work okay in the past couple of decades, which is, and we'll use an example, let's say you have $1 million 401k plan, right? And if you look back at historic returns, you earn more than 4%. So they're saying, well, if you withdraw 4%, you'll be okay. And if you have a good year, let's say $1 million goes to, $1.1 million because you earn 10%. Or if you draw on 4%, you went from drawing 4% on $1 million, which would be $40,000, to now 4% on $1.1 million, which would be $44,000.
Okay.
So you're keeping up with inflation. You got a nice little pay raise, and if that could work forever, tell me where to sign. I'll do that right now. Right, that would be great.
That's what all of the retirement people tell me. It's so easy.
It's so easy. The problem is it doesn't always work that way.
Right.
So you go back to, just imagine if you were retiring this year, and you retired in January, and you're like, wow, this is great. Things are, rolling along, and all of a sudden the pandemic hits and your account went down some 20, 30%, overnight, you're probably panicking a little bit.
Right.
So on that 4% withdrawal rule, the problem it could be you have another 2008, or you have another 2000, 2001.
Right.
And you are it's like slow death. You get $1 million, you lose 10, 20%, so now you have a much smaller number. And if you're taking 4% out
from it, wow,
from a much smaller number, that means now you're getting a pay cut, not a pay raise.
Yep.
But also you're putting extra strain on that principal.
Right.
And it could go down a lot faster than you want to see that happen.
Right.
So
right.
that could be the danger.
Okay. And then what about a fixed number? Like, hey, I just know that I'm going to take 40% every year regardless.
Oh,
I mean, not 40 grand.
40,000.
40,000.
40% would be hard to do. Tell me what to do that, and I'll sign up right now. You sometimes you get to have a conversation with somebody, and they say, hey, if I could have an extra $2,000 a month, I'd be fine for the rest of my life, right? And you take that same fixed amount out from wherever the principal is.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing you're not thinking about is keeping up with inflation, because we know $2,000 a month today is not the same $2,000 a month next year or even 10 years from now. We'll need more. The second thing is, again, going back to sort of the sequence of returns thing that we talked about, taking the same percentage or the same dollar amount from whatever the balance might be is going to be fine if the balance goes this way.
Yeah.
But if the balance goes this way, and again, to your example, you got $1 million. I need $40,000 a year for the rest of my life. I'll be fine.
Right.
Well, that's great if you could at least earn 4%. But if you don't and you lose 20%, now $40,000 on, say, $600,000 or $700,000 is not the same $40,000 anymore, right? It's percentage-wise, it's a much higher percentage, and again, putting extra strain on the principal. And if you have good genes, like in my family, my folks, my dad died at 97, age 97, my mom was 95, and hopefully with any luck, I'll live a long life and have a long retirement. So you just have to be mindful of, is this going to work?
Right.
Or am I just hoping it's going to work?
That's a good point you bring up. Is I think people put their plan in their head, like, okay, I'm going to retire at 60 and I'm going to die at 80. Like, well, it doesn't work that way. You might have some sort of situation that happens where you have to retire early.
Yeah.
It could be, an injury in the job or something like that, where all of a sudden you're withdrawing earlier than you thought.
Yeah.
So your retirement accounts don't get to grow as much as they could have. And then also on the far side of that, you're blowing out your candles at your 81st birthday, and you're like, didn't plan on this either.
I mean, it's amazing how many times I've had a conversation, just, a friendly conversation with somebody, and you say, well, what are you worried about? Well, I'm worried about having enough money. I said, well, what happens if you showed me that you have enough money to age 80 or 85, and, well, I won't care about that time. Well, listen, if you're alive, you don't have a choice. You have to care. It's not like, well, I'm not going to do anything for the rest of my life. So if it was that easy, I'm going to retire at 60, die at 80, then that's one thing.
Right.
But of course, real life doesn't work that way.
Right. So this brings us to, again, if I am someone who's trying to figure out my future and I'm trying to look at my distribution options here, this is something that you've brought up to me, and you call it the 3-bucket approach.
3-bucket approach.
What is that?
Well, we use a lot of it here, as part of our retirement planning. And you hear that old saying, never put all your eggs in one basket, right? Which kind of, if you think about that, the 3-bucket approach is really a liquidity bucket for emergencies, having enough money in the bank, not having to rely on the next paycheck to come in. I mean, if you have an emergency, a real emergency, as we've seen it in the last 6 months, people being laid off, people just like needing to get their hands on cash, that first bucket is a liquidity bucket, very, very important.
Okay.
The second bucket is to make sure you can pay your bills. Having some type of an income strategy in place for a portion of your money that will pay you that $40,000 a year or $2,000 a month, regardless of the economy, interest rates, regardless of like outside influences
Okay.
is really important. That's where you should rely on having that income stream come from.
Okay.
And then the third bucket is really important to consider also, which is keep up inflation, making sure that my money is growing. So maybe you might need an investment professional to help you with, having a portfolio. Like in my case, I have a moderately aggressive portfolio that didn't do so great in March,
Yeah.
but I understand it goes up, it goes down, and I don't need that money right now. So I'm not going to pay so much attention and worry so much that I went down a little bit, because that's really for the long run.
Gotcha.
And sort of, and that's not the right consideration for everybody, but for most people, this is just common sense, right?
Right.
I need to have money in the bank. I need to have money that I can protect and take income from, and I want to take some risk and earn some big gains on this third bucket.
Right. It seems like it almost kind of marries some of those other distribution options. Like you can have that, not the lump sum, but like you have that liquidity bucket, which is that cash that you might need if you need to make any big purchases. You need a roof or a new water heater or whatever it might be.
Sure.
You have that liquidity, so you don't have to take large withdrawals from your 401k or from the other thing that you need to replenish and live off of that interest.
Yeah.
So you have that, and then you have that fixed income stream, which I guess maybe like a pension or an annuity, something like that might fit into play there, where it's just, hey, this is mailbox money, you call it, right?
Mailbox money. There's so many people, if you're watching today, maybe you're one of the fortunate folks that have a pension. And, congratulations, because I know I'm not going to have a pension. I have to create my own. And sometimes people sort of, don't value a pension as they should.
Right.
And just understanding having a paycheck for the rest of your life is a really valuable thing. So we have clients that, like I just saw somebody in the pipe fitters union recently retired, and he has a choice. He can either take a lump sum, or you can have like $38,000 given to him for the rest of his life as a guarantee. I have a good friend who just retired as a police officer, and same deal. He took the pension, and he's still doing details and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing less and less of that because there's not much going on. But he knows every single month he's going to get a core income check, mailbox money.
Yep.
So that's an important thing to consider. If you have that choice where you work, at least run the numbers, see if it makes some sense. And oftentimes we help people sort of create that, and it might make some sense for that particular person's particular situation.
Okay. With the recent changes in like the Secure Act and everything that's come up lately, what are some things that, again, like, my parents and my grandfather might have been able to retire with this mindset, RMDs are at this, or I can always inherit X amount of money or whatever. How has the Secure Act changed how I should be thinking about my distribution options?
Okay, Secure Act, for those that are not familiar with the Secure Act, it's an act that they sort of snuck in there at the end of last year, meaning 2019. And it sort of caught the retirement community by surprise. Mm-hmm. It was talked about, but it went from talking to actually law like overnight.
Yeah, which doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't happen, For the most part, I think it's pretty good. They delayed the required minimum distribution from age 70 and a half to age 72.
Yep.
So that helped some folks. There's a lot of sort of subtle changes as well that helped many other individuals. I think the one thing that caught a lot of people by surprise, and people just need to be aware of this, we talked to so many people over the last 30 years. I've had many conversations, and you might just say, hey, Adam, what would you like to do in retirement? Well, I just want to be able to play golf 3 times a week, go on vacation a couple times a year, sort of keep my principal intact, right? Earn maybe 4 or 5% a year, not go crazy, take out my required minimum distributions, and I start with this much, and then the day that I go, I'll get to leave this to my wife. The day that she goes, she'll get to leave this to our kids.
Yep.
And hopefully they're responsible and do the same thing. And sort of that principle sort of stays intact and goes to the next generation, and then hopefully to the next generation. I mean, how many people wouldn't want that?
Right.
The Secure Act took that away. So essentially what I mean by that is something called the inherited IRA. That's really gone by the wayside. And there's a lot to understand, but just for the purpose of this episode, you have to take that money out over no longer than a 10-year period.
Right.
So you have a situation where you have, say, $1 million 401k. The whole idea was to take RMDs out, keep the $1 million, leave it to your kids.
Right.
If you were to pass away today, that $1 million has to be taken out over no more than 10 years. So they could take it out all at once, over 10 years. Don't touch it for 5 years, take it all in year 5. Don't touch it for 10 years, take it all in year 10. But what that does is it accelerates the tax obligation to that recipient.
Gotcha. It's almost like you have your own distribution method options for when you inherit money now or inherit an IRA.
It's kind of like you don't have a choice.
Right.
The Uncle Sam said, this is how you're going to take the money.
Yeah.
We had a situation where we got a radio listener call in, and the dad sort of did something on his own, thinking it was the right thing to do. I think they had 3 kids. One was in the middle of a divorce, so all he did was he changed the beneficiaries from 3 kids equally to 2, and his mindset was, well, my oldest daughter Renee is going to take care of her sister who's getting divorced, and I can't stand the son-in-law and this and that. And then he died.
Oh.
And what he didn't realize was all that money was an IRA. So now Renee has to just to take money out to even things off for the sister, who's now her divorce is final. They have to take money out at once to sort of even the playing field for the other sister. But everything came out taxable, and it was way more than they wanted to take at once. And again, just not to sort of go into too much detail, at the end of the day, the Secure Act really changed a lot of things for passing assets on to the next generation with IRAs and 401ks, and it really made Uncle Sam your silent partner.
Right. And that's something that you've touched upon before. That's why I kind of laugh, is because you're like, oh, a lot of people don't understand another beneficiary in your 401k is the government.
Yeah, the government.
Yeah. So going back to tie this all together, factors that I need to consider when I'm looking at my distribution options are, again, when I'm going to retire, what is my current age? Because again, if I'm retiring early, do I have that ability to access some of my 401k?
Well, today with the CARES Act, because they put that in place, there is some band-aids right now for people that really need their money if they got laid off and they have no other place to get money other than in the 401k, and you're not 59 and a half.
Okay.
You have some access to that, but that's not permanent. I think like you said, Adam, there's so many factors that go into play. Age, how's your family genes? If your parents both didn't make it to age 70 and you're 65, you might be thinking, wow, hey, I'm gonna spend this quickly and have a good time and have a party.
Right.
Versus if your family's all lived a long time, you got to make sure that, hey, I got to make sure I do whatever I can to make this last. Right. You got outside economic factors, right? Like right now, you went from working at the same job with a lot of job security for 25 years, and all of a sudden now you're finding yourself laid off. Right. But I think at the end of the day, of all the things that I see that people don't really do a good enough job of, is just a very simple, like, how much money do I need in retirement? That sounds so elementary and so basic. You'd be shocked at how many people I meet that don't know that number. Like the other day, one of our very first in-office meetings, this nice couple came in, and previous to actually us sitting down, she sent me a nice email, looking forward to meeting you, and she sent me like a 11, 12-page summary of her life. And it was great. Like every question that I would have asked her, she gave me the answer in advance.
Nice.
Except for one thing. And I said to her when we met, I said, the only thing you're missing is, maybe you forgot to write it down, how much money do you need a month, a year from now when you stop working? And they looked at each other like, geez, we haven't figured that out. So if you don't know that number,
right,
how are we going to be able to determine for you, well, if your question is, this is what I've saved, is it enough for me?
Right.
Well, I don't know how much you need to take out. So that is probably the most basic thing that people can do for themselves as they go into this retirement planning process. You want to know, there's a lot of things we need to know. Like, is the money in the right place? Is it risky? Is it not risky? But is it going to last you? And without knowing how much you need to take out,
you don't know, right?
You don't know.
you don't know if $1 million is enough or $2 million is enough or maybe 500K is enough.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
That's exactly
so
right.
maybe we should do that. So if you're watching the video and we've done this before, we've given away the monthly budget calculator, but if you're watching this and this is kind of your first time, or if you're just kind of hesitant to do it, and this is, again, just another reminder that until you take that first step, you're not really doing anything to help yourself in the retirement planning process until you know what that number is.
Or maybe you looked at it 2 years ago and I'm taking, everything's all set, but now you've paid off your mortgage.
Right.
So maybe you don't have that debt anymore. Or maybe you've actually bought a summer home.
And you've incurred more.
You've added on more debt. So
right.
It's always a good idea to do it, every few years, but especially if you're within, say, 1 to 5 years of retirement. That's really a number that you need to know.
Right.
And not guess.
Right. Especially again, something happens and all of a sudden you're forced into that retirement a little bit earlier than you thought. And you had no idea what that number was.
Right.
You have no idea what you're going to need to withdraw from So
you can always work longer. You can always alter your lifestyle. I don't think those are choices that people want to consider.
Right, yeah.
So at least know where you're at.
Right. So we'll do that. So again, if you're at afterthepaycheck.com, just click on the link below and you'll be able to get access to that our little monthly income gap calculator, and just figure out what your budgets are, what your needs are, where maybe there's some gaps are in your retirement. And it'll kind of help you determine what you might need to figure out what your distribution methods are. Maybe I do need to withdraw a little bit more earlier on to figure that out. Or like you said, maybe you can work a little bit longer if you can, or just at least you know what some of your options are once you figure out that number.
Or it might be that I don't really have to worry about it because I have, husband and wife, they both have pensions, they both have Social Security, and they make, 2x the amount of money they need a month.
Right.
And they're like, well, I don't need to touch any of this money, and I just have to take out my required minimum distributions. And it might not be a difficult exercise. So it could help you plan, or it could help you sort of put yourself at ease and say, whew, this is okay.
We did it, yeah.
I'm okay.
Check mark, yeah, I did, yeah. You win retirement. Congrats. Sam, thank you for taking the time today to sit down and record this episode.
Great being back in the office.
Also, thank you again for the hat. I am going to wear this on the way home.
It's one per employee.
I can't take the whole.
Can't take the whole.
We need the kiddie sizes for all of our kids and everything that we have in the office now. And again, if you aren't already there, visit afterthepaycheck.com to subscribe to future episodes or to check out older episodes of our After the Paycheck series, or you can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts as well. Until next time, take care.